and welcome to Pop Screen. We are the Geek Show podcast dedicated to the good, the bad, and the inexplicable of movies either about, starring, or by pop stars. No, the podcast covers such a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from science fiction to documentaries. I'm Graham Williamson. I'm film critic for thegeekshow.co.uk and horrified.com, and I also write inlay booklets for Second Run DVD. This week, I have been joined by
Mick, who can occasionally be found lurking on our comic book adaptations podcast, Behold.
Very good, it is too.
But other than that, just generally sort of lurking in the midst of pop culture and absorbing it all, so that when called upon, I can
do
disgorge my understanding and knowledge and appreciation of it.
A big factual vomit.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, normally Pop Screen allows a year or so at least for the film to marinate before we can do a proper reassessment of it. But for this week, we are reviewing The World's a Little Blurry, a documentary about Billie Eilish by R.J. Cutler, which it would be fair to say is the most cutting of the cutting-edge films we have featured so far, the loudest bang of the bang up-to-date, the most aggressive honk of the modernity goose. I write all these myself, listeners. I don't know if you appreciate this.
He doesn't. Someone bought him a book of nursery rhymes, and one of them is called The Honk of the Modernity Goose. It's an up-to-date nursery rhyme book, I'll grant you. It's a little avant-garde, but there you go.
So in that spirit of experimentation, Mick, in the spirit of keeping things right bang on the moment rather than an introduction, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Billie Eilish, or to give her full name, Billie Eilish Pirate Baird O'Connell, was born in December 2001. How much does that make you want to die?
Well, not as much as when I offered to step in on this episode, the shocked reaction from you.
I mean, listeners, in case you haven't been, we've done a number of podcasts with Mick. Some of them we're still holding in reserve, but the most recent one you were on was Absolute Beginners, and we had a very long and fruitful chat about Style Council. So, I'm not stereotyping you, but you weren't the first person I expected to pounce on it.
Well, I like to keep people guessing.
So I suppose the more pertinent question then would be, how and when did you first find out about Billie Eilish?
Well, the first time I was made aware of her existence was when the announcement came that she was going to be doing a Bond theme.
Ah.
Because normally, and I think this is one of those signs of aging, right? You run and walk and cycle a little slower. You start migrating over to specialist glasses for reading and VDU work. And you start going, ooh, when they announce who's doing the Bond theme.
And the policemen get younger every day.
And so consequently, I was borderline with Skyfall because which was Adele, and she wasn't really on my radar. I'd kind of heard of her, but it's not my bag. She's don't get me wrong, she's got a cracking voice, just not my kind of. It's not my particular brew.
I would agree with that assessment. Yes.
So I knew who she was. I think Spectre was
Sam Smith. Yes, owner of the annoying chain of pubs.
Yes.
That joke will mean very little to those outside the UK, but it was worth it.
It will, yeah. And again, I was aware of his work, although I believe it's now their work.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's true.
But was was much more a fan of Their Best Bitter.
Yes.
So yeah, but when they were doing the rounds, and of course, you know, as we speak, No Time to Die was due to have been released about 15 years ago.
Yes, it was scheduled for the 10th anniversary of the franchise.
So at that point, yeah, I had no idea who she was. It wasn't music that was getting played in the kind of sort of occasional sort of in passing type places that I was in. So yeah, I listened to the No Time to Die track. I thought, well, that's a bit non-Adele.
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
It's not even Adele adjacent.
It's
not even very Sam Smith. What it reminds me most of is Garbage, and not in a bad way.
Yeah, we should point out, listeners, he is referring to the Scottish American alternative rock band who, actually, now you've mentioned it, No Time to Die is a better Garbage Bond theme than the Bond theme that Garbage did. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. And I sort of, I've got a few, as you know, I'm marginally athletic.
Yeah, more than marginally. Don't do yourself down.
And it was on playlists for running. Things like Bad Guy were on there, and so you know, I've dipped my toes in the world of Billie Eilish, more so as a result of stepping in to do this, and I find it an interesting artist. She's one of those artists that I'm not entirely sure I could sit and do the album from start to finish, but I certainly aren't going to dive for the radio to switch it off when one of her tracks comes on.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, she's not PJ and Duncan, that's for sure. Or post 2010 Morrissey.
Yeah, that's been a bit of a slide, hasn't it? Yeah, I can do an album, and I have done an album. And one of the things that I do really like about the album, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go, is that it is a proper album. It doesn't feel like a Spotify playlist that someone's just crammed onto a record. It actually has some sort of flow and structure like an album should.
Well, I think that was evident. I know we'll do this in detail. I was fascinated by the whole production process.
Oh yeah, because that is one thing that is very different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's her and her brother Phineas O'Connell, who
had they run out of names by the time they got to him?
I haven't checked Phineas's middle names. He could have a pirate slipped in there, as they said to me when I was working the docks. But
that explains all the cream.
But yeah, it's basically them in their bedroom, isn't it? Which back when I was starting to get into music was the sign of a very credible underground marginal artist who only releases things on self-produced cassettes and certainly does not get picked out to do the Bond theme unless Daniel Johnson has something, you know, that we really don't know about in his back catalogue.
This is it. I mean, let's get one. I think we need to look at the fact that for an artist who's been active for 3-4 years?
Yeah.
We've got a 2-hour 2+ hour documentary.
2 hours 20 minutes. Yeah, when I saw the running time, my first thought was Billie Alexander Platz.
I don't know. What's the runtime on something like Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man?
Yeah, that's true. That's about sort of 2 hours, 2 hours 10. Yeah.
I mean, by the time Billie Eilish is celebrating her 40th birthday, the biopic that gets released will be an HBO series. it'll be their longest running show since Game of Thrones.
And yet the thing is, did this not fly past pretty quickly?
It did. But I think that's almost its problem.
Mm.
You mentioned in the intro that we talked about the Style Council.
Yeah.
And of course, in the summer, there was a documentary, Long Hot Summers, about the Style Council and their formation. It was only about, once you cut out the adverts, I think it was only about an hour long.
God, once you cut out the adverts of a show on Sky Arts, is there even a show left? But yeah.
But, you know, it wasn't aimed at me because I was a big Weller and Style Council fan. I learned very little new information from it.
Yeah.
But to the general viewer, I'm sure they learned a lot more about the Style Council than they knew before.
Yeah.
I probably don't know 2 hours worth of information about Billie Eilish now that I've watched this documentary.
I see what you mean. Yeah. I mean, obviously, in terms of how you talk about information with something like a Style Council documentary or a documentary on any band who've been around for that long, you talk about information in terms of album releases, singles, tours, changes of lineup, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah. Obviously, this has not happened to Billie Eilish yet.
Yeah, but also there's also the thing that you know, I mean, that obviously touring's a large part of it. We get quite a lot of concert footage. Most of it ended in some kind of disaster.
God, yeah. I mean, when you see what a perfectionist she is, you think, will she be able to watch this film? Because it's just like 2 hours and 20 minutes of her injuring herself and forgetting the lyrics and just having awful times on stage.
I know. I mean, that side of it is quite endearing. The fact that you know, there's one, is it Coachella, where she goes on stage and fractures her ankle before the intro's finished.
Oh no, that's the Milan one. The Coachella one's the one where she starts singing "All the Good Girls Go to Hell" and forgets what the second verse is.
Yes. No, so the Milan one where she sort of fractures her ankle.
Yeah.
Before the intro finishes, and she goes to limp off stage. And when she comes back on, she says, "I'm sorry, guys, I just don't want to do a crap show for you."
Yeah,
it's like, stuff the leg. I just don't want to do a crap. So those bits are quite endearing. But what I still don't. I know that she listened to Bieber when she was younger. But
again, how much does that make you want to die? By the way.
Yeah, but I don't know what her influences are musically. They're clearly not Bieber, because he never produced anything like this.
Well, halfway through the film, we do sort of hear the production of the Bad Guy remix with Justin Bieber on it, which it would be fair to say she is more excited about than the world was when it was released. In fact, the main chart effect of that coming out was that the original version of Bad Guy suddenly started going back up the charts. So it's really a song that makes you think, oh God, the original version of this was so good. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't have that. And, you know, I wonder to what extent would that be there? Because I remember she got flack a bit back for not knowing who Van Halen were. And, you know, firstly, I wish I lived in a state of prelapsarian innocence where I didn't know who Van Halen were. I would say, listeners, if you don't know who Van Halen are, extend that period of grace for as long as possible, because they absolutely suck. But
I have a whole cache of friends who would beat you senseless with a David Lee Roth standee, just for uttering that.
Yeah, and that's the thing about a David Lee Roth standee, isn't it? It's not as tough as a Lemmy standee. But yeah, I don't know whether this is part of her kind of world, her image as someone who was homeschooled and who is quite sort of insular and makes all her songs in her bedroom with her brother. There seems to be this process where she listens to the same sort of Obama era radio pop as every kid in America her age, but somehow has synthesized it into this.
Yes. And the other thing that struck me in this documentary was that when I first heard things like Bad Guy and indeed the No Time to Die, I thought, well, this sounds incredibly overproduced. Because the voice is just so otherworldly, and she's like a grunge Mariah Carey. If you can imagine such a thing, vocally. She does all the warbles and the effects, and she doesn't need production to do them. She does them live on stage as well. But it's a rawer, less sort of showbizy voice than...
Yeah, her style of vocals is, and I suppose this is one reason why she feels so current, because probably recording technology has only just got to the point where you can do this, you know, in front of a massive screaming festival crowd. But her voice is quite sort of whispery and intimate. It reminds me of an anecdote about the XX. The band The XX, where they said the reason why their sound is so minimal is because they used to rehearse at the house of one member who lived with their parents, and they just didn't want to make a racket, but somehow that turned into a whole aesthetic, you know?
Yeah, there's several points in The World's a Little Blurry where you think, no, go back, I want to know more about that. Because you go for quite a while, and then suddenly she went, oh yeah, that's my Tourette's. Like,
yeah.
What? Wait, hold on now.
Yeah, although part of the structuring there is interesting because this is one of the least kind of authored, I guess you would say, documentaries I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of those like very early docu-soaps in the 60s and 70s, like The Family, which when they were out, everyone said, oh, this is an astonishing invasion of privacy. It's, you know, absolutely vulgar. And you watch it today and it's just like, it's just a family having like standard time together. There is something of that kind of unaffected fly on the wall quality in this, I think.
There is. And I think the seed for it is some early home footage from when the Ocean Eyes track was sent into the radio station and got the airplay.
Yeah.
And it's kind of difficult to spot the transition between that home video footage of them celebrating the success of Ocean Eyes into what is the Apple TV Plus documentary piece. I think there's just more people in the room.
Yeah.
At one point, you start recognizing people who must be part of the crew.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is that family dynamic seems at once both ultimately supportive and insufferably stifling. The mother particularly.
The mother cum masseuse, yes.
Yeah. Yes. Hey, it's always handy to have that kind of person in the family, you know, on standby 24/7 without having to pay them overtime or indeed union rates. I mean, for me, you could probably have, towards the end of the documentary, the concert footage was feeling a little bit samey.
Yeah.
Because all those bits that we've mentioned about her perfectionism, about her relationship with the fans, about the frailty that she sort of gives away on stage occasionally. By the time you've done the third or fourth bit of concert fleet, you kind of encapsulated all that, and it's kind of time to move on and maybe have a look in depth. You know, how does someone who, I mean, clearly it's not a particularly acute version of Tourette's that she's got, but you've got to wonder how someone with Tourette's overcomes performance anxieties and things like that in order to be able to give that performance. What drives her to not give up after the setback she got when she was dancing and the self-doubt she's got about songwriting and stuff. And I just feel that in 2 hours 20 you should have got deeper into that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Personally, I liked the amount of concert footage. I remember when I watched Miss Americana, the Netflix film about Taylor Swift, that, I mean, that does go a lot deeper and probably does address some of the issues that you'd have been interested in here. But I left thinking, ultimately, this film's supposed to be for Taylor Swift fans, but we only hear about sort of 2 songs at a decent length on stage. Yeah. So I was pleased that this basically ticked off every Billie Eilish song that I would have liked to have heard, particularly since I'm probably not going to go to one of her concerts because, you know, being a 37-year-old man would make me feel deeply out of place there.
Sorry, remind me, why would that be a problem?
Because I'm old, Mick.
Yeah, you're not but a bairn.
The only person who has managed this there is footage online, which I was half expecting to turn up in the film, of Tom York dancing at a Billie Eilish concert, and you think, there he is. That's the one divorced dad in the world who is allowed to go to a Billie Eilish concert.
And you mentioned at the top of the show about Billie Eilish being born in 2001. How does that make you feel?
Yeah.
My one excuse to go to a Billie Eilish concert would be to take my grandchildren.
Yes.
And by the time they're old enough to be going to concerts, she'll probably be doing a greatest hits retrospective.
Yeah, she'll be doing the sound and vision too.
The 20s revisited.
Remember the pandemic? Woo!
And the other thing that struck me was the boyfriend that she's got, Q.
Yeah.
He's a dick in exactly the opposite way to how you'd expect the boyfriend of a teenage pop sensation to be.
Can we appreciate for a start the fact that he's called Q, which makes me wonder if he spends like his off time posting on message boards claiming to be a high-level member of the Trump administration. That's a niche joke again, I know, but I'm sticking to it.
I mean, bearing in mind what we've said about the generational gap between us as reviewers and the subject matter of the documentary, was he named in memory of a much missed high-profile glossy music magazine?
Yes. Perhaps, yeah, or perhaps his parents were big fans of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Named after John Delancey. But yeah, he's an absolute dick in a completely the opposite way you'd expect.
What were you expecting, would you say?
I would have thought that the boyfriend of a teenage pop sensation like that would be the shameless hanger-on. You know,
yeah.
She'd be the one sort of being exposed to the world and all sorts of new experiences and stuff like that, and be moving on far faster than he was.
Yeah, yes.
And they'd be going, oh, obviously she's earning millions, so there's that parasitic element as well that you'd expect.
Yeah,
to a degree. But no, he was so far out the other side of not fussed, it was untrue.
That's true, yeah, isn't it? Ghosting a teenage millionaire that's a new one on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. The other thing is, I spent quite a bit of the runtime trying to work out what sort of environment she needs around her. And for some reason, I expected her to be very comfortable being alone and in her own company.
Yeah.
Because I suppose that's the kind of image we have of these kind of bedroom pop auteurs, and it has been since Brian Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not quite it, is it? She actually needs people, particularly family and close friends, and her boyfriend around her as much as possible. And venturing outside of that and doing things on her own seems quite intimidating, which I can understand when the entire world wants to mob you.
Yeah, and I think it is. I think that's probably where the documentary at times felt at its most intrusive. There's the scene where she's going, I'm going to get out of there. There's going to be all these people there. They're all going to be wanting a photo, and if I say no, I look like a bitch.
Yeah,
and actually worrying about that. Whereas a lot of the sort of established stars that we know, when they were that age and having that level of success, they didn't give a flying about being a bitch.
Yeah. Which I suppose is part of the technology aspect, because, I don't know if John Lennon ever told a fan to fuck off when he was like 20 years old, because no one had a smartphone around to capture that moment.
And that was another piece, that bit where they were trying to second guess material.
For the album. Yeah.
What if I write a song about drugs being bad and how I'll never want to do them? And then in 20 years' time, it turns out I've done drugs and it's changed me. Well, don't do that then. Well, what are you saying? We don't release this song because I might do that? Or
the greatest thing about that scene is that her mother is giving her a shoulder massage, and she gets very angry about the suggestion that the song should not be released. And her Billie's expressions in this scene are absolutely magnificent.
But as you say, that the 2 hours 20 flies by. It is an engaging watch. And I think I've probably got a much better appreciation for the music. I'm still not entirely convinced I could do the album from, just to show my age, side A track 1.
Yes.
Although it's probably available on vinyl in a gatefold special edition at about 450 quid.
Everything old is new again.
Yeah. But I think that what I took away from it was how, despite all this sudden exposure and fame and fortune and stuff, she's actually stayed quite grounded and real. And at the end of the documentary, she sums it up quite nicely. She sort of goes, I've got my dream car.
Family around me.
I'm kind of pretty.
Yes.
And she actually qualifies it. I'm pretty, kind of. And that's it. I've got everything I want now. There's no... She mentions that they're still in the same backyard, and she points it out as being a good thing, that they're still in the same backyard and same house and everything, even though they've got millionaires.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, not that they've got millionaires, that they are millionaires.
But they probably keep a few as well. You never know.
Just in case,
Yeah, how the rich live, yeah.
I don't want to be a millionaire today. You go out and be a millionaire for me.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think one of the things that shone through for me is that, and I suppose this might sail over other people's heads, but that there's a point where she's just given a concert and she is very stressed out and she has a lot of places to go after this, and they send her backstage to hobnob with a bunch of like record company and magazine and PR people who she's never met before. And she is absolutely adamant that this is the last thing she wants to do. And it's very easy to listen to that and think, teenagers whinging on. But I'm thinking to how I was at 16. I was thinking if I was in that situation and there was that much money on the line, I would be unable to even vocalize that I did not want to do this.
Yeah. And I think it's where the documentary does her a great service, because in that scene, she could have quite easily come across as the spoiled little rich girl.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. I'm tired. I'm stressed. Blah 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 blah. But because of all the other bits we've seen, it's actually this enough already.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't shy away from the work. She doesn't shy away from the background stuff. All right, she's a bit iffy about the actual songwriting price.
Yeah.
But she's there meeting the fans. Yeah, she's there meeting the fans for the shows. She's there rehearsing the songs. She's there rehearsing the concerts. So yeah, you can understand that. Just sometimes she just wants to have a bit of a lie down and a nice cuppa.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Listen to a Justin Bieber record whilst watching Will Turner in Pirates of the Caribbean.
This is, listeners, the best film Orlando Bloom has been in for about 15 years. Yeah, it's quite weird, that sort of that catalogue of people who want to meet her, and how many of them are people who she looked up to in her childhood.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, that felt quite strange. I suppose partly because of how young she is, and you think you're still half in that teenage crush phase as you actually meet these people.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a difficult one to sort of get your head around. The closest I've ever been to being in a situation like that, was DJing in a club in West London, which was part of the BBC, but it wasn't regularly frequented by many of the sort of DJs and stuff. But because it was a leaving do for one of the production staff, all of Radio 2 descended on this one particular Friday. So I've got people like Johnny Walker coming up to me, asking me to play records for them. And that's it. How does this work?
Yeah.
How did I end up in this place?
Well, it's strange, isn't it, when you do something for people who do that for a living. I've read like a lot of people say a lot of directors say that they were really intimidated to direct someone like Robert Redford or Clint Eastwood, not just because they're icons, but because they direct as well.
Yeah. They do the job that you do.
Yeah.
And it's... There is an element, certainly for me, there was an element of sweaty palms. That there were people I'd seen hosting Saturday morning TV. There were people that I'd seen hosting Cracker Jack in there, and
Yeah.
And they're asking me to do their job for them. They're going to be judgy.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, I didn't do what Billie did with Justin Bieber and just hang on to them for minutes.
Yeah, I mean, these 1970s radio DJs, it would have been ill-advised. If anything, it's going to go the other way around.
Yeah. So, although it should be pointed out that, as far as I know, there were no allegations against Ed Stewart Stewart or Johnny Walker.
Johnny Walker's a good guy, yes. Johnny Walker heard a sketch on Chris Morris's 1990s Radio 1 show where they found him and Chris and Peter Bain and found Johnny Walker's corpse stuffed down the back of one of the Radio 1 sofas. And he met Chris in the parking lot and laughed and said, "You killed me last week, didn't you?" So yeah, top bloke.
Yeah. So yeah, I do like the kind of level of intimacy this documentary manages to maintain without feeling voyeuristic.
That's a good point. Yeah, it really should have felt voyeuristic at some point. And I remember when I started reading about what's in it, I thought, do I want to find out about a teenage girl's dating life just because I like her music? But it does not feel like that at all.
Well, mainly because her dating life consists mainly of not dating.
Fucker isn't there, is he? But other than that.
Yeah. Where are you? Well, can you be here?
Yes.
Why not?
And in a weird way, I never sort of felt protective of her because she is surrounded by such a good support structure and she is so good at vocalizing the problems she's having while she's having them.
Yeah. There's almost an inspiration for a little narrative film there. You know, like Seven, that whole mystery with what's in the box.
Yeah.
Billie's relationship with Q.
Yes.
You don't actually find out about the boyfriend till the end.
Yeah. Yes. If this was a fictional film, you would be expecting some kind of Sixth Sense style twist, wouldn't you? Where it turned out Q had been a ghost all along. Oh no, he's just a really crap boyfriend. I see.
So yeah, it was an enjoyable documentary. I shall probably make more of an effort to listen to the music. If only to fill the gap between now and 2026, when No Time to Die finally gets. Actually, to be fair, because didn't they say something about having reshoots because the technology had moved on?
That's it. Yeah.
So perhaps by the time it actually gets released, she'll have been dropped, and they'll have, I don't know, given the soundtrack duties to some fetus.
The technology thing was so extraordinary because you think this is the downside of doing a sort of grounded, down-to-earth take on Bond. Like Roger Moore never had to worry if people were going to mass-produce cars that turn into submarines.
No,
that wasn't going to happen.
I mean, to be fair, they never mass-produced Lotuses in the first place, so
I'll take your word for it. I know nothing about cars. That was the most alienating part of this film to me. I can easily relate to somebody who's like a millionaire at 16, but I cannot for the life of me relate to people who were interested in cars.
And yet, of the two of us, you're the driver.
That's true, yeah. It's just like, it's a box that gets you around town.
I've immediately been brought to mind that time you got a flat tyre.
That, to be fair, that was very early in my driving career. And it was the first accident I'd ever had.
And you were surrounded by two people.
Yeah.
One of whom didn't drive.
Yes.
And one who was a driver but was familiar with older technologies.
Older technologies.
Like spare tyres. Like spare tyres. hidden in recesses in the back. And when we went to look for your spare tyre, we found a machine that pumped gunk in.
Got me home, though.
It did.
This kind of model of celebrity, where on the one hand, there's no gatekeepers. You can just upload a song like Ocean Eyes to your social media account and, if it takes off, it takes off. it strikes me that Billie Eilish is the best case scenario for this, that you've got someone who is social media savvy, who is comfortable saying when she's really uncomfortable with stuff, who has a record company who seem to be mostly letting her do her own thing, and a family who were very supportive. It's very nice, but I couldn't shake the feeling that when this generation has its kind of Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain style blowout, it's going to be pretty horrible because there are so few boundaries and checks on what a celebrity can do.
Yeah. Now. I don't necessarily think that the blowout itself is going to be any worse. But it is going to be the
most documented.
Yeah. I mean, people who don't want to know about it are going to know about it.
Yeah.
There'll be like teenagers going around crying in a way that I probably won't have seen since Take That split up and they needed to set up a helpline.
Yeah, what a wild week that was. I remember that. Yeah.
And actually, it wasn't Take That splitting up, was it? It was just Robbie leaving that they set up the helpline for, I think.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I thought there was. I seem to remember there being one of them splitting up. I might be misremembering.
I think they did that just as a matter of course. But I think the original helpline was set up because Robbie was leaving Take That.
Right. Was there a helpline set up when Robbie rejoined Take That?
Only for Take That. and that's the thing, you know, that's only what, 30 years ago? 25 years ago? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I mean, I was too old for Take That when Take That were around, so that's how old I am.
You know who else is too old for Take That?
Who's that?
Take That. Yeah.
So that was 25 years ago, and you needed a phone to contact that helpline.
Yeah.
And you don't need that now.
Yeah, that's true. And, you know, I suppose part of the reason why someone like Billie Eilish is so confident operating in this kind of world is also the thing that's kind of risky about it, which is that we demand less of a barrier between ourselves and our stars now. It's very hard to be a mysterious, enigmatic superstar.
Yeah.
But there's that bit towards the end where she's just live streaming herself with a pet tarantula walking down the shirt, and she just turns off and says something like, 50,000 people watched that shit.
Yeah. I know. And I think that's the thing. There's a cynical part of me that saw, I think it was Katy Perry.
Yeah.
Giving her advice, and, you know, if you want to talk, there's a cynical part of me saying, is she saying that to Billie Eilish, global dominating superstar?
Yes.
And would she offer the same advice to someone 37 places further down the list at Coachella?
Yeah. Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I want to be seen with Billie Eilish, but I don't necessarily want to be seen with Fred Bloggs, who's done a similar kind of music in a similar kind of way and had about 1/10 of the success.
Yeah, and that
which is still quite a success.
Yeah. And that is part of what sort of makes you think, oh God, we've come on a long way in a short time, is looking at this in cinematic terms and seeing people like Katy Perry and Justin Bieber in this film, and remembering that 10 years ago, the pop documentaries that were made were like Justin Bieber, Never Say Never 3D, or other big IMAX spectacle films.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this is distributed on Apple TV because of the pandemic. It surely would have been out at cinemas were it not for that. But
I believe it has had a little limited cinema release in countries where cinemas are still a thing.
Yes, rumor has it that, yeah. But even if the big 3D IMAX concert film was an option for Billie Eilish, it would still not feel like the right vehicle.
No.
It has to be something this low-key and intimate. It has to be something that sort of offers you the kind of backstage look, I think.
Yeah. And I don't know whether it's just Billie Eilish or whether it's indicative of the latest generation of music stars. But Never Say Never 3D, IMAX releases, that's kind of quite gimmicky.
Yeah.
And a marketing thing.
Yeah.
And what I got from this was, yes, she's got Billie Eilish merch at the concerts, but you didn't have those long lingering shots of the merch stand.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
That you normally get at a concert film.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. The key sort of visual motif of the concert scenes is how long Cutler spends showing fans singing along, which is a really powerful thing to see.
Well, they
sometimes.
have to, because Billie forgets the words.
Well, yeah, they got to.
Or she breaks a leg, or she snaps a neck, or
it's
spontaneously combusts on stage.
It's like Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. We guarantee you a free horrific injury with every ticket sold.
Yeah, it's. But no, I think that's a nice thing. She's managed to be successful without there being a huge marketing machine.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the record company did their thing with billboards and stuff like that. But, I mean, that would have happened anyway. But
the billboards are quite... they're an impressive thing to see as you're driving down Sunset Boulevard or wherever, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, you see, I want to now drive by Ebbing, Missouri and see. No.
They're bound to have sold that advertising space by now. It's had a lot of attention.
Can you imagine how much it probably costs now to advertise on billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri? They're probably prime marketing.
Yep, last person to do it won an Oscar.
Yeah.
That's success for you. That's probably what they've got on now. They've probably got those sort of advertising for advertising billboards where it says, your business could be here and you could end up at the Academy Awards as a result.
And while we're on the subject of awards, that was the other really nice sort of grounded moment, was when the Grammy Award nominations and announcements were out.
Yeah.
And the mum was there with the phone, with Phineas on the other end, and she was actually more thrilled about the one he'd won.
Yes.
Than she was about the ones she'd won.
Because her mum wakes her up with the Grammy nominations, and at first that just means you're seeing like this green back of her head.
Yeah.
It's just going, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah. That's nice. But the one for Phineas really does excite her. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really nice to see.
I think it's a remarkable thing to have this kind of unfiltered access to someone who is this big. And I'm glad that it happened for someone whose music can bear this kind of analysis in a lot of ways, whose music is actually enriched by seeing people sat around with an acoustic guitar trying to work out the middle eight.
Yeah. And that was the other thing that was really interesting from the point of view of seeing the sort of song gestation process.
Yeah.
Was the fact that they'd have a track and they'd be playing it and it sounded like a finished track.
Yeah.
And then I think Bad Guy was the one. Oh, actually, maybe we could just spin it round so that I'm the bad guy.
What a moment that is to have captured. Yes.
And you think for that hit to have been such a phenomenal success, and that to have been the moment that made it the song it is.
Yes.
It's like, do you know what it reminded me of?
Yeah.
Do you remember the Fast Show?
I do, yeah.
You remember the guy who used to come in and just go into the filing cabinet and say, Oh, really?
Yeah.
And the interrogation suspect will just instantly crack.
That's another thing where your comparison of this to a fictional feature film is just making me laugh so much. Can you imagine a Billie Eilish biopic where you've just got like some actress who hasn't even been born yet sat on a bed going, what if we spin it and make it so I'm the bad guy? You would rip up your cinema seats if that happened. It would be the cheesiest moment of inspiration in film history. But there it is, happening on screen in front of you. And that's amazing, because I think part of my mission with Pop Screen is to mock every single one of those terrible biopic inspiration moments. And I'm maddened that suddenly there's one that's actually great.
Well, I mean, to be fair, this isn't really a biopic, is it?
It isn't.
It's a home movie.
It's a home movie
made by someone who was brought in from outside the home, obviously.
Yeah, there is that. Yes, it
but
does
you
like
get the feeling that they were like, I don't know, dossing down on the sofa.
Yeah. Like I say, it does have the feel of one of those early docu-soaps, but about someone who is the biggest star of her generation, which is really weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yes. So next week, we're recording this quite late, so I can confidently say what we're doing next week for once. Yeah. Most of the time, I have no more idea than you, listeners. But next week, we are doing It Couldn't Happen Here, the film made by the Pet Shop Boys. Yes.
Gareth Hunt, I believe.
Yes, he's in it, and Barbara Windsor.
Yeah.
Many said it shouldn't have happened here in the first place, but to find out...
Well, you know, I was a teenager in the 80s, and, you know, therefore had a liberal dose of pretension, and even I gave It Couldn't Happen Here a wide berth.
Well, to find out what Ewan and I think, tune in next week. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this show or any of our other shows, please feel free to share them around. Write us a review on your podcast provider of choice, because it is genuinely bizarre how much that helps. It's almost as if the whole infrastructure of online distribution is just really badly thought through, and you can game it just by writing 5 stars, very funny and entertaining. Yeah, almost like that. You
read my review then?
But yes, until next week with It Couldn't Happen Here, that's been your lot from Pop Screen. I've been Graham.
I've been Mick.
And we'll see you next week. Duh.